What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today, with Season of the Wish, we're going over our first build, which involves the newly buffed Apotheosis Veil. This thing is crazy for that grenade and melee damage on bosses when you cast your super, so we're probably going to come out with a couple different builds for y'all with this. With Void, this one right here is Solar, maybe even something in the Stasis realm or the Strand realm. We will see how this one goes, but I absolutely love this thing, and it's absolutely juicing bosses with that weapon and the grenade slash melee regen of this, so you will see why in a second. So before we get into anything, going over the perk Insatiable immediately regenerates your health, melee, grenade, and rift energy for you and your nearby allies upon activating your super. For us, we're going to be using that Well of Radiance for survivability and just that support of it. After your super ends, temporary gain great increase to melee and grenade regen, so you can just continuously basically throw your grenades, taking us back to the Starfire days where we could just throw fusion after fusion after fusion. This feels very similar with that. You can change up your grenades, especially since it's not tied to a certain type of solar grenade, but I'm liking fusions. Solar grenades are also nasty with the blops that come off of them, and even trip mines with that nice explosion and scorch damage, pretty solid as well. Now, onto the mods for this build that we will be using. On the helmet, we're going to be using Dynamo to get back our super even faster when we use that Phoenix dive near targets. On top of that, we're using a seasonal mod right here from our artifact, so solar and stasis weapons will create orbs of power instead of one or the other. So if we don't have this in the next season, which obviously we won't, I would throw on heavy ammo finder and then something else if you have the space, but intellect does take up 4 of our power, so that is a little caveat of this. All of our mods do take up 4, but totally just an armor thing. If you have the slot, throw on harmonic siphon as well. Now right here we're using solar loader because of our 2 solar weapons that we will be using, definitely for the DPS side of things, mostly with our rocket. On top of that, bolstering detonation with fastball, so we can increase our throw distance just a little bit faster with getting those grenades to the enemies, especially those bosses, and getting those defeats with the grenades or just causing damage will help to get our Phoenix dive back, which will help us to proc Dynamo more often, getting us our super even faster. Now for me, I'm using concussive dampener on this with charged up, so we can have that extra armor charge, so we can use our solar weapon surge just a little bit longer. Concussive dampener you can switch out for your other burns. You can see we could go with something like melee resistance, sniper resistance, even throw on like art, and then we got our harmonic to back it up. But for the time being, I am just sticking with concussive because it seems to be a lot of that in the new dungeon specifically. Now, when we move back to our boots, like I said, double weapon surge on this for our solar weapons and that DPS, so we can continuously throw our grenades at those enemies while just ripping shots via our rocket and get that crazy DPS. And last but certainly not least, Reaper with time dilation right here, so our solar mods will last a little bit longer because of time dilation, and then we will be able to create more orbs of power with Reaper, so that'll help with Dynamo to just kind of perpetually give us back our super even faster, and we do have 100 intellect, so we're gonna get well very, very quickly. Now, to pair with this, we have a certain set of weapons. First off, we have a Riptide with Chill Clip, which is super, super important for this build, partially because of our seasonal artifact. Plus, I just like Chill Clip. There's a couple different fusions that can grab it, so just make sure to have that in your kinetic slot. Sunshot for me, definitely one of the best. You could use Vex if you wanted, but definitely any solar weapon right here in this slot will be perfect. Now, for me, I went with Apex Predator with Reconstruction Bait and Switch, so we can just absolutely kill that damage with Apotheosis Veils, being able to throw out grenades and melees consistently. And then we're going to be able to apply Chill Clip, which is a stasis debuff, and we're getting Apex with Bait and Switch, so we can just continuously shoot that out with Reconstruction, get a couple shots in there, switch back, apply that debuff, come back to this, it'll be reloaded because of Reconstruction, throw a couple grenades, and you will see the damage on bosses is just absolutely insane. Now, importantly, this season, to make this build even better with the Apotheosis buff, we have some pretty banging artifact perks that make Solar Supers absolutely nutty, as well as, like I was talking about, with that stasis debuff. So first off, this Flame Fiber and Freeze, this is what we use for that stasis and solar surges, not surges, I should say, with creating orbs of power in these siphons. Kindling Trigger. Radiant causes solar weapons to apply Scorch to unscorched combatants. This is absolutely nutty, especially we're going to be creating Radiant very easily because of this artifact as well. That right there is another factor with Flint Striker. Rapid solar weapon precision hits or the final blows grants us Radiant, which will pair perfectly with Kindling Trigger. Now, Torch. Well, Radiant deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by Strand or Stasis debuffs. This right here is why we're using that Chill Clip on our Riptide, so we can apply that Stasis debuff in the Slow or the Freeze. And then while we are Radiant, because of these two right here, we're going to be doing more of that damage with our Apex Predator Rocket in that Solar, so it just pairs perfectly like a match made in heaven this season with some of these mods. On top of that, Heart of the Flame, casting our super grants nearby allies Radiant, increases the damage of our super for each nearby ally. Doesn't matter as much since we're using Well, but it will give other Guardians a Radiant, so they will be able to do a little bit more damage on the bosses and etc. as well. Now, in the fourth column right here, we are using Revitalizing Blast. Causing damage with a solar ability weakens champions and bosses for a short duration. So this right here plays perfectly into Apotheosis Veil, since we are just throwing grenades all willy-nilly like, causing those bosses to become weakened for a short duration. And then lastly, Raise of Precision. Well, Radiant, Solar Precision, Final Blows cause ignitions on targets, so that just pairs right back to Flint Striker as well as Kindling Trigger. And then when we get our 12th one unlocked, you could go with Argent Ordnance here to consume an armor charge, which makes our rocket do a little bit more damage, but it doesn't seem to be that great in my personal opinion, so I would go with Solar Operative, so you can be the only member going in doing that solo content. Is definitely the way to go in my personal opinion with this build, because nothing else really speaks to me for these mods and the solar side of this build. Now, last but certainly not least for this build, kind of bringing it all together with our abilities, aspects, and fragments, using the Well of Radiance for that survivability, as well as just feels super nice for that endgame content. Obviously, we got the Phoenix Dive because it comes back a little bit quicker, with a Balance Glide as well as Celestial Fire, just easier to hit some of the farther away targets with this than our Incinerator Snap. Now, for grenades, like I said, totally up to you. I have really been liking fusion grenades as well as solar grenades with this build, but something like Trip Mines even works well with scorching and dealing that extra bit of damage, so these three are my go-tos with this build. Now, for aspects, Icarus Dash, just throwing this on there because while we're airborne, rapidly defeating targets with our super or weapons cures us, just a little nice caveat of it, but definitely Touch of Flame, so those solar grenades as well as fusion grenades have enhanced functionality, so fusions explode twice while that solar grenade lingers longer and emits the blobs of lava, which do more damage. So definitely fusion and solar are the best in my personal opinion, but Trip Mine not bad as well. For our fragments, got Ember of Searing, so defeating those scorched targets grants us melee energy as well as fire sprites. Fire sprites, collecting them will give us grenade energy, plus right here, Ember of Mercy. When we revive an ally, we gain that restoration, plus picking up fire sprites grants us restoration, so plays right back into Searing. On top of that, we got Ember of Empyrean, so weapon final blows or ability final blows keep that duration of restoration and radiant up, so this will be super nice for our grenade spam as well as with that sunshot. And last but not least, Solar Grenade Final Blows Courier, just another way for us to get a little bit of health back, since we're going to be using those fusion grenades to get some kills on top of it, especially when we're in our super, and we'll be getting that back really quickly. So you can see we are just blowing through some of these bosses, dealing some pretty crazy damage, up to 6-7 mil depending on your fire team, and if you can get that right strat off by using the chill clip to proc that stasis debuff, which then helps us with the weapon damage while radiant, and we're getting that from this build and our artifact mod. And then we got bait and switch on our rocket, so we are just absolutely annihilating bosses. Plus we're spamming fusions or solar grenades with throwing a melee or two in there as well. So the DPS of this build is off the charts, plus the survivability. Who doesn't love having a well on your team for that dungeon content, that master raid, master dungeon, even grandmasters, which will come out soon enough here before you know it. So hopefully y'all can try out this build. Absolute banger. Change to Apotheosis Veil. Like I said, gonna be having a couple different builds for this. Definitely got a void one on my mind because it is super fun. Plus we can do some even more better damage, if you will. More better, listen to me talk, because of Nova Bomb. But definitely a go-to staple with Well right here. Definitely give it a try out. I appreciate all you guys for sticking around on the channel. Means a lot to me. We are continuing our grind hard. When I Jedi on all my social medias, make sure to go check that out. Join the Discord as well for any questions and help on the Destiny, just gaming, anything like that. So appreciate all y'all. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.